Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Maverick Mods. This week, I want to do a little experiment. The last video I did on the Firebird, where I made door panels, well, it was a series of videos, but the culmination on the last video was finishing a door panel. You guys seem to respond pretty well to that. Comments, views. Only one problem. I really don't like doing interiors. And I don't want this to become Maverick's Interiors YouTube channel. I would rather it just be plain old Maverick Mods like it is, where I just work on stuff. And once in a while, if there's an interior, yeah, okay, I'll do it if I have to. But I would much rather get my hands dirty and greasy and work on stuff and fix things. So going to work on the Ram this week and do some straight up mechanical repair. So grab your popcorn. Let's get started. If you guys want me to retain my sanity, then do me a favor. Watch me fix something. It's okay. So I made a door panel. Big whoop, So I created something. Okay. But I like fixing things too. I like getting my hands greasy. I like, okay, it's broken and, I did my thing and now it's fixed. So, all right, where are we at? 98 Dodge Ram. Picked it up a while back, destined essentially for the junkyard. I had a ton of problems with it. But with just a little bit of elbow grease and not a whole lot of money, I think I can bring it back. The way this truck came to me, it had a lot of problems. But the main thing was that the radiator had gone bad in it at some point in time, and the previous owner had replaced the radiator. And the new radiator decided to commingle the transmission fluid and the coolant. Not a good thing. It's usually not good for your transmission. And that was problem. It stopped moving and therefore it got parked and then it wound up in my hands. Problem is, I can't diagnose the transmission properly yet. So the first thing I did on the transmission was I just dropped the pan, changed the filter, tons of sludge in the bottom of the pan. Okay, got that put back together, and immediately it started shifting better. So there's a glimmer of hope. I still don't have a whole lot, but I think there's a glimmer. But then I had to change the radiator. And as you'll watch me on today's video, I did change the radiator. And then that opened up another can of worms. So here we go. New radiator going in. Not really a whole lot. It's not difficult at all. Just slide it in, drop it down into the little rubber baby buggy bumpers at the bottom. There we go. Get the shroud out of the way. There we go. There's one. Nope, missed it. Must be. There we go. I say it must be getting late in the day. I'm just having all kinds of hell. My brain seems to have stopped working today. Probably means I should stop. But I'm a little bit too stubborn for that. Radiator's in. Slide my washer tank back in its little brackets. Did I miss? Yeah, I did. Boy, I screwed that up. There's a tab on the bottom that it's supposed to slide into, and I missed that. There we go. Got the engine flushed out and refilled with fresh coolant. It's warming up right now. We're going to see just how, well, hopefully there's no more mixing of fluids. Let it get up to temperature. I'm not going to take it for a test drive yet because that is close to one of the nastiest air filters I've seen in quite a while. So I need to run to the store, get a new air filter, and clean that out. before I put any of this back on. Guys, I'm laying on my back with a little wrinkle in the plan. Let's see if I can get the camera up in here and you can see. We have a front cover leak. Of course, you can see it dripping right there. It's pretty active. This truck had a water pump replaced. In fact, you can see it. It's new. And unfortunately, what happens a lot of times, especially on an older one of these Dodges, Fords are the same way. Let's look at the other side because it's leaking too. Okay, you can see right up there, kind of just to the right and above the dipstick tube. You can actually see it just pouring out of there. And like I said, this is common in these types of setups where basically the water passages into the engine go through the front cover, and then the water pump sandwiches the front cover to the engine block itself. And if you just on an older, setup like this, if you don't do it right, and sometimes even if you do, what happens is you release the tension, you replace the water pump, and that seal between the block and the front cover just gives up. And that's what's happened in this circumstance. And you can tell that's right where those water jackets or right where those passages go through to the water jackets in the engine. So front cover's got to come off. So that means water pump, all the accessories, balancer. So I've got to reseal the front cover. Having determined that I need to tear the front of the 5.9 off to get to the front cover and reseal the front cover, I'm kind of thinking, is there anywhere else on this engine while I'm at it? It's kind of one of those while you're at it kind of a thing. One of the things that's very common on these engines is, let me go over to a spare part here and I'll show you. This is called the kegger. This is the intake that comes, it's a factory intake on the Magnum engines. Everything from the V6 all the way to the 3.9, the 5.2, the 5.9, all use a variation of this. Actually, the 5.2 and the 5.9 use this exact intake. When this intake is cast, obviously it's got tons and tons of runners up on the inside. And in order to get the casting the way they want it, they have to leave a big opening in the bottom of it. And their solution to that was to seal this opening because that's the intake plenum inside of here. They just have this metal plate that they bolt on. There's a gasket in here. And over time, what happens is that this gasket gives up and you wind up with an intake leak internal to the engine. And if you let it go long enough, then you actually get oil consumption issues. You've got massive carbon buildup on the backs of your intake valves. But it's basically every one of these intakes is going to start leaking. It's just a matter of when. And I've already tested this, and there's no real. I thought maybe I'd be able to show you because it was obvious. But what you can do, take your PCV, either take your PCV valve loose at the intake, at the valve cover, which I couldn't get that out. So I took it loose in the intake, capped it off. And over here, take your fresh air intake tube loose from the intake box. Just let the engine idle. And you just take them, stick your thumb over this hole, stick your thumb over that hole, and you feel for vacuum. You either feel for pressure or you feel for vacuum. If you've got pressure and it's trying to blow out, then your intake is still sealed. If you feel vacuum, then your intake is sucking through your crankcase and that plenum gasket is bad. So I tested this one. I've got a very, very slight vacuum. So it's not bad, but it's never going to get any better. So in one of those while you're at it things, while I've got all of this off, it's easier to take all of this off while I'm doing the front cover. And since it's off, let's go ahead and pull the intake as well. Get the intake off, reseal that. Just that much more work for me. Yay. Let the teardown begin. I've got the front of the engine torn down to the point where the front cover is ready to come off. Only thing that concerns me so far is, well, it's, of course, I got a mud dauber nest right there. Doesn't concern me. What does concern me is the water outlet, or the water neck thermostat housing. This thing is awfully corroded, and this thing has been leaking around here for a long time. This hose, the bypass hose, was really in bad shape, but it's obvious this has been leaking. If I might see some corrosion underneath there, I'm gonna go ahead and pop this off, take a look at it, and see what it looks like. If necessary, I've got another intake that's a lot better shape than this if I have to swap it out. I really hope that these are just corroded, because if somebody tightened these this tight, that's not good. You should, I mean, these are 5/16 bolts. Normal torque on these is somewhere around 22 foot-pounds or so, something like that. That was not 22 foot-pounds. And the bolt really isn't corroded that bad. Got the intake broke loose, and hopefully it'll come right out. Or not. There we go. Okay, let me set this off to the side. This is probably dripping all kinds of leaves and dirt and stuff. Now, disregard the broken intake bolt. That's very common with these. Basically, you get corrosion down in here. The holes are open on the bottom on both sides. I think they're open on the bottom. At any rate, very common on the front studs. What's interesting on this is part of the intake gasket, and it was kind of sticking out. This is what surrounds the cooling jacket down here. And it looks like it was compromised, at least on that side, possibly on this side. It's really interesting that I don't think I've ever seen something quite like that. Well, anyway, it's all going to get replaced. So, a lot of cleanup ahead. Well, I got bit by the while you were there syndrome. Figured, you know what? May as well just replace the valve cover gaskets while I'm at it. Good thing I did, because they were leaking on the back corner back there a little bit, and on the bottom edge here just a little bit. And the old gaskets were, well, they were done. They were hard as a rock. So time for them to be replaced anyway. I'm actually really impressed at how clean the inside of this engine is. I know you can't really see it from here, but let's go look at the valve covers and see what it looks like. The inside of these things are not sludged up like you would expect for a poorly maintained 220,000 mile motor. They're actually in pretty darn good shape. Speaking of clean, I really dislike putting dirty parts back on anything. It's just an OCD thing for me. The intake was nasty, and I cleaned it up as best I could and ran it through the sandblast cabinet and threw a coat of cast aluminum paint on it. So it's going on and will look a whole heck of a lot better. And I did the same thing to the front cover. So, and the inside of the front cover cleaned up really nice. Again, no sludge. I'm pretty impressed with the inside of that motor. I think everything's pretty well cleaned up. I've got the mating surfaces cleaned off, ready for a final blow with air and clean everything up on the truck. And we're ready for reassembly. Intake is cleaned up. Time to put it back together. First off, we'll start with the new plenum cover gasket and cleaned up plenum cover. I said, I just don't like dirty stuff when I put it back together. Probably doesn't make a whole lot of difference other than my OCD. And we'll just pop the bolts back in. All right, let's start off with 50 inch-pounds. Let's do the final plenum torque sequence. Let's see, start there. 84 inch-pounds. And just go in a circular pattern. All right, done. Flip this back over. Get the rest of the intake rebuilt, which basically means putting the fuel rail and the injectors back on, get the water temp sensor back in, manifold, that's the MAP sensor, manifold absolute pressure, and this will be ready to put back in. Intake is ready to go on. Got my gaskets in place. Some guys like to do a build up on what they call the China wall, which is all that is just it's the webbing between the basically in the lifter valley. Some guys like to do a build up of RTV or gasket maker. These are the factory end pieces, if you want to call it, the China wall gaskets, but they've got positive locating tabs. They seem to work pretty well. They're also rubber, they're pliable. All you got to do to remember is when you put them in, just a dab of gasket maker or RTV in the corners just to help seal them. So gaskets are in place. The main thing on this is just remember, try and drop the intake down. I wish I had a couple of just regular studs to do this, but I don't. But just drop the intake straight down so that you don't shift the gaskets any which way. And that causes a lot of problems when you have leaks at the China wall. And of course, this thing is not light. Get a couple of convenient handholds. Nice thing about this engine is you don't have to pull the distributor to get the intake on and off. All right. And we are straight there. Some guys will say you need to replace your intake bolts every time. These are not one use only. They're not, torque to yield, anything like that. Other than the ones that broke because of corrosion, I don't see any need to replace these, although I did have to go through my spare bolt box. Luckily, I've done this a time or two before and find some replacement bolts for the two that broke off on the front. So let me get the rest of these bolts in, get them torqued down, and then we can move on to replacing the front cover. I've got the initial torque sequence done. I got to concentrate here. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 144. Okay, just make sure that's right. It is. Okay, I've got the initial torque sequence done. Main thing, and this is not just this intake, this is pretty much all intakes, aluminum intakes especially. You don't want to just start cranking down on bolts willy-nilly. You want to do an actual torque sequence. Worst case scenario, if you get it on there crooked, you tighten one too tight, you can actually break an ear off of an aluminum intake, or any intake. If you get them off, you might have sealing problems. So you basically start in the center and work in a circular pattern out. And I'll also do a incremental torque. So I started off at 35 inch-pounds, which all that does is just kind of center everything and get it started down. I went up to 70 inch-pounds, and that starts to seat the intake, and again, circular pattern all the way around. I just did 105 inch-pounds, and my last torque sequence is going to be 144, which is 12 foot-pounds, which is what the factory spec is. Same thing. I've just, rather than put away my inch-pound torque wrench and get the foot-pound torque wrench out, just as easy to do it this way. So again, I'm going to start in the center. There's 1, Yeah. You get the center bolts, and you just kind of work your way back. All right, now I want to go one more time around, same torque setting. Just check them all. Make sure that they're all the same torque. Let's see, I've got the front cover on loosely. It's not completely bolted tight yet because I have to get the water pump in and aligned. And part of that is going to be my bolts here. The bolts go through the water jackets, so they do need some sealer on the end. I've got that done. I'm just going to set 2 of them in here to start with. I've got just a smidge, just a super duper thin layer of RTV on the gasket. Let's go ahead and get it started anyway. There we go. 1, 2, 3. Now, before I forget, because I probably will otherwise, I did get a new bypass hose. Let me grab that real quick and put it in now. It's just easier than trying to do it later. Next, harmonic balancer. Got to put that on. And of course, I don't have a harmonic balancer installer tool that will fit this bolt size. Of course, I have to do it the old-fashioned way. I know you're not supposed to do it this way, but if you don't have a choice, you don't have a choice. Grab my trusty 32mm socket and my big impact. I think that's probably good. Torque to factory specs. The accessory bracket's going back on. The paint might still be just a little bit wet, but you know what? That's all right. I'm doing this because of my OCD, and that's pretty much it. Let's figure out where we got to go here. There's 1, 2. I think next up, let's see, what have I got left? I've got heater hose, throttle cable, and looks like a vacuum hose. I've got the cruise control to hook up yet, alternator, air conditioner, and then I can put the belt on, get the hoses on, and then it's going to be fan, radiator, or fan, shroud, and radiator. Well, guys, I ran out of parts in the back of the truck. I also ran out of bolts and nuts. It's actually short a few nuts, which is kind of weird. I just drained the water out of the oil pan, which there's going to be a little bit that gets in there when you kind of open it up like I did. So now it's just time to add some antifreeze. Check the oil. Let's see if it starts. There's enough in it to run. One thing I haven't done is I haven't changed the oil on this yet. Gotta wait to do some of this other stuff. All right. Unfortunately, it's too late in the day for a test drive. That'll have to be for tomorrow. I'll let it sit overnight, check for leaks again in the morning, recheck all the fluids. And for the first time in who knows how long, we're going to try and take this truck down the road. That's the current exhaust note on the Ram. You know, if I was still a teenager, that'd be pretty cool. But it's probably just a little bit loud, and I bet you it drones like crazy when you get it, you know, down the road. It's got a Flowmaster 10 series muffler on it now, and that's it. And it's about as close to straight through as you can get. And I'm trying to come up with a kind of a low-tech way to tone it down a little bit. So down to the auto parts store, we're going to try the old Cherry Bomb. It's 24-inch glass pack. Stick that in front of the Flowmaster, and maybe between the two of them, it'll bring it down to an acceptable exhaust note. Let me crawl underneath here real quick, swap this out, and we'll take a listen when I'm done. First test drive, pulling out of the shop. Let's see how far we get. Yep, I gotta jump out real quick and fix the passenger side mirror. Hang on. Alright. Let's try this again. Okay, backed up okay. See what happens when we go forward. That rattling you hear is the front bumper. Come on, dude. It's almost like it took off in second gear. Okay. There's a limp home mode where it just stays stuck in second gear. There's also a mode where it stays stuck in third. It's not stuck in second, I just can't feel it shifting. But it actually moves under its own power. So here's what we're gonna do. Coming back to the shop. I'm gonna tighten that front bumper up, and then I'm gonna service this transmission again. See how much more sludge I can pull out of it. Then we'll go from there. Well, that's gonna do it for today, guys. After the first test drive, I came back, I tightened up the front bumper. What else I do? I ran a code scan and replaced the O2 sensor because that showed was bad. And it shows me that I'm having transmission issues with the torque converter lockup and the 3/4 solenoid. Kind of figured that. After that, I took it for another test drive, ran it through all the gears. I verified I don't have first gear. Well, it's not shifting in first gear. Doesn't mean I don't have it. It's just starting off in second. So I got to work on that. Another transmission flush probably, hopefully, will clear that up. Other than that, so far, let's see. I told you guys before in the last set of videos I would keep a running track of how much I'm spending on this thing, just to give you an idea of if you find a derelict out there that's one step away from the scrapyard, is it worth resurrecting it? So let's take a look at what I've spent so far. So let's see, just a quick recap. I bought the Ram for 300 bucks. I bought a rolling chassis for 300 bucks. It had a bunch of parts on it I needed. Now, I know you guys complained about my math, but I repurposed a lot of those parts that either I would have to have spent anyway on this Ram, or I was gonna have to spend on my Dakota. So that's why I kind of deducted there. I know, it's government math. You know what? It's Maverick math. So I'm not even gonna do actual costs. I'm doing Maverick math. So on Maverick math, I saved not having to buy new front springs. I saved on O2 sensor. I saved on a fan clutch. I saved on replacing the wheels and tires that were on it for good ones. And I scrapped the rolling chassis, so I got some money back from that. Last episode, I replaced the seat cover and cushion there. And for this episode, the radiator was 209 bucks. The gaskets for the engine and various thermostat, you know, blah, 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 things like that were 122 bucks. And the various is the muffler and the bolts I needed to buy for the front bumper. I needed a new water neck, a new water outlet. So that's all included there. So as it stands right now, by my math, total, I have $549 in this rebuild right now. Now there's still money to be spent, and there's some things I have spent for future episodes which will show up on here as well. But that's kind of where we're at right now. Guys, I'm telling you, Maverick math works. It's a thing, and I'm going with it. At any rate, certainly appreciate everybody tuning in. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I really want this channel to be something more than Maverick interiors. You know, I want it to be actually Maverick mods, where I work on a little bit of everything, not just a Firebird, not just, what else have I worked on? A Mustang. I got my Chevy pickup yet to go. I got the Studebaker yet to go. So certainly do appreciate everybody watching me all the time. Please like, share, subscribe, notify, blah, blah, blah. You guys know the drill. It actually does help me out. Next week, I'm not sure what I'll be working on. I am working on the Firebird, but it's body prep, and that can be boring and repetitive, and see if I can do something on that. Might be another little something on the Ram. At any rate, stay tuned. We'll see you guys next week. Everybody, have a great day.